Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this Euronews debate. My name is Jeremy Wilkes. I'm a science reporter at Euronews, and today we are talking about innovation in rare disease. But I can welcome here now Jan Lecam, the CEO of patient representative group Eurodis. We also have Alessandra Moretti, an Italian member of the European Parliament. David Nestor, head of neuromuscular diseases for Europe, Canada, and partner markets at pharmaceutical company Biogen, and Natalie Moll, the Director General of EFPIA, the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industries and Associations. We've seen a huge amount of innovation when it comes to pharmaceutical industry in Europe, because in the last 2 years, we very quickly managed to develop a vaccine for COVID-19. Does that give you hope now, looking forward, for dealing with rare diseases? And I'd like to hear from Alessandra, please, first on that one. What are your thoughts when you see what we achieved with COVID-19?
We know that the pandemic touched us a lot. Most of all, it showed us the importance of creating a European health of union, protecting the life and well-being of its citizens. The decisions by the EU institutions to face the pandemic together by avoiding a challenge among member states for resources, equipment, and treatment showed us the power we have when we acting together. We learned that the European Union must have a stronger role in terms of public health and more responsibilities.
Natalie, from your point of view, has there been a change of mood?
This moment now where the European Commission is reviewing the regulation and the combination with COVID made us as an industry look really deeply into what are the barriers. Why is it so hard to find treatments for rare diseases? 95% of rare diseases still don't have a treatment option. And one of the things that we found was a huge stumbling block is the science. Because the populations are so small, scientific knowledge decreases as the prevalence reduces, right? And we really looked into this and said, okay, we were in COVID, we were amazing. We collaborated, we did incredible, opened our databases and digital took off, as Jan just mentioned. And so we looked into, when we review the regulation, we need to make it possible to have a moonshot approach, a concerted effort towards developing the basic science and accelerating translational research like we did for COVID.
David, what are your thoughts from Biogen?
It's not all about drug development. It's about, getting to hospitals, getting the care, thinking outside the box and quite differently. So I think, we've embraced those, we've learned a lot. And I think that will help us in the future to think about the patient journey that people have to go through. What was normal for all of us, maybe lots of people on this call today that don't have a rare disease or don't have a disease, we face challenges about getting our milk and our bread every day. And it's sort of when something's taken away from you, it really resonates how life can be so difficult.
95% of rare diseases remain without a treatment. How confident can you be that the kinds of reviews that are underway, the discussions underway that you're taking part in, will create the right kind of environment to address the urgent need of all of those diseases that we have out there?
The current rules have many positives and helped to achieve great results. At the same time, we believe it's not enough. Building on those successes and on the positive aspects of this regulation will be our objective, but we should not be afraid to intervene if needed to change things and make that better.
There is no structured access from approval, assessment of value, and to access the patients. And this is where we need to link the system. So where we see the improvement to bring to these regulations is, one, to take as a baseline the current incentive. Second, to modulate these incentives to address where the major pitfalls are, where the non-met needs of the patients.
We haven't moved in the last 2 decades that level from 8 drugs to more than 200 without the OMP regulation. For us, speed is of the essence. In rare disease, what people need to always understand is we don't have a long time. We're often working in conditions that if we can't find a solution within 12 months, a year, 2 years, these patients, these diseases are fatal. So the clock is ticking from day one. And I suppose the challenge for us today is that we know rare diseases is complex, from the epidemiology, from sharing of the knowledge and what we understand about the diseases, the clinical trial recruitment, the endpoints that we look at, how we then translate what we have an approved medicine to actually access locally. So for me, I think, yes, you have to look at that whole ecosystem, and it needs to fit together to reflect the uniqueness.
How can you possibly go fast in that kind of world when you're facing such a complex challenge?
We were really fast with COVID, right? So it's different. Of course, the science was different, and we borrowed some science that had been worked on for 20 years. But I think what we saw with rare diseases is that there are different obstacles. So not only the incentives worked really well, and as Jan said, we have more than 200 products. We have a lot of SMEs that were built, but there are still enormous hurdles with the science. So I'm going to go back to my moonshot. We still need that approach. There is proposals for incentives, new incentives, I think fantastic, where unmet medical need persists. If you couple that with a scientific moonshot, so a real effort in those areas where really we have difficulty unraveling what's going on, and then accumulating those with existing rewards, making that very, very predictable, because that is important if you want to fill the space and make sure that we have investment in those sort of white spots. You need to make sure there's a 15-year investment here, so you can't have any sort of wobbly or changes in your incentive framework.
Okay, well, I think it's time to hear from a patient, from Doddy Weir, MBE, who we were very lucky to have the chance to speak to. Let me just introduce him. If you're not a fan of rugby, then maybe you should check out some of the photos of this guy in action. So he's a former Scottish rugby international, 61 caps for Scotland during a successful playing career, represented the British and Irish Lions in South Africa in 1997 and won several championships with his clubs. And we started by asking him what it was like to live with ALS, also known as motor neurone disease.
MD has totally affected my life on a day-to-day basis. I think I'm very lucky in the way that I've been able to live with MD for 5 years. Now, after being diagnosed, the average life expectancy is 2 years. I've got to ask for help to get fed, to have a drink, to make a drink, to look at my mobile phone. I basically cannot do anything. And people don't understand that it's not very handy for even 10 minutes to do something like that. And I've got to do 24 hours of that.
We also asked Doddy about what he felt needed to be improved, some of the things that he felt frustrated about, and he said, in fact, the answer was very interesting. He said it's important to make sure that you tell the world about the research that didn't work as well as the research that does work.
I think a lot of trials in MD maybe didn't come to anything, but I think it would have been a great idea if the industry had published these, not mistakes, but failures. So going down the line when somebody else was to do something that's been done before as have failed, they could have noted that and tried to change it accordingly.
Doddy was fearsome on the rugby pitch, and he's carrying those qualities off the pitch as well. And I'd like to compliment him and congratulate him for the great work he's doing to highlight awareness and challenge us all. The Biogen journey in ALS has been painful as well. Back in 2011, our first clinical trial in ALS ended in failure to meet our primary endpoint. And again, we had to learn from that, and I'm delighted. There's one thing I'm delighted to say to Doddy is we did publish those results, the Empower study at the time. And I think that is important. We need to learn cross companies, cross borders, cross oceans. We need to share information. And, knowledge is power to make the next step.
Now, let's listen to this keynote speech. Thank you very much to Sandra Galina, who recorded this and sent it over to us. She's the Director General for the DG Santé, the European Union's Director General for Health and Food Safety. Let's have a listen.
The Commission is very committed and has been committed for over 2 years to tackling rare diseases. Rare diseases, but not so rare as they actually affect 36 million people in the EU. The prime example of the commitment has been the European reference networks, which have proven their worth since their launch in 2017. An important element of the networks, and I think everybody realizes that, is the activities that they have in creating EU-wide registries that link all the repositories that exist. Now, once fully operational and populated with clinical data, these will facilitate the development of clinical research in the field of rare diseases and will improve healthcare, but also planning of patient care. I would say that integrating these registries into the European health data space is going to be a very important step, a major step, because this will create a sea of opportunities for patients to access their data and to foster research and innovation.
The European pharmaceutical strategy, for which I have been the rapporteur in the Parliament, wants to be a concrete answer to patients' needs. It has four main objectives: ensure patient access to affordable medicines and address unmet medical needs as rare disease. Second, promote the competitiveness, innovation, and sustainability of the European Union pharmaceutical industry. Third, improve crisis preparedness and response mechanism and address security of supply. And four, ensuring a strong European Union voice in the world by promoting high standards of quality, effectiveness, and safety of treatment.
One of the things I really wanted from this panel is to get some national perspectives, because we have different nationalities represented. Philippe, can I come to you and just ask, what is the situation related to rare diseases in France? How do you see the setup at the moment compared to other countries? What are the frustrations that you have in dealing with the challenge of rare diseases now?
Yeah, it's frustrations are the right term, to be honest. It's still very difficult to talk about rare disease in France, because we still miss a basic communication directed to the general population and also directed to the politicians to let them know what is a rare disease. When you talk about rare disease at the French Assembly, for instance, usually they just understand the term rare. So they think that if it's rare, it doesn't matter really. Okay, so it's a long work, and I try to do my best in the last 5 years to explain that in France it will be 3 million of people, and mostly kids, and we can't leave these kids by themselves.
Sandra Gallina listed the revision of the pharma regulation general, in particular for fan medicines and for pediatrics, the European Funds Network, the evaluation of cross-border healthcare, etc. So she mentioned all that. She also mentioned the funds and strategy of Horizon Europe and the digital strategy. And that's her point, is that to do that well, we need to have a consistent approach across, not in two pieces. There is a lot of confusions, which then at the end, because all of that is confused and because we're not clear about what we want to achieve, or at least some people are, that then you have answers like, oh no, we're not going to do that in research because we already do it in health, except that, guys, you don't do it. So we need to clarify all that, because we're losing years and we're losing life by the way we do it.
We've seen 20 positive years in that sense, that with tackling or addressing some of the rare diseases, we have many products in the market, which I'm sure we wouldn't have if we wouldn't have that EU framework with incentives for rare diseases. I'm sure we wouldn't have those products because of the effects known in the market. So I think in a way you could say it's a success story, definitely. And I think we need to get better, and I totally take what Jan has been mentioning before. We need to get quicker, we need to get bigger, better, not necessarily bigger as companies, as you said. It's not about the company itself, it's about, like, a small company can be very agile and good in doing research and bringing products even, but we have to get a bit quicker.
We need to broaden a bit our perspective here, and I'm looking at what's happening in different parts of the world. We have a fantastic situation in Europe. We have a model of care for people with rare disease, and in fact, we need to be proud of it and to enrich it. That's the question. Yes, it's money, as you mentioned. but it's also collaboration.
Thank you very much for being with us on this in this discussion. It really has been fascinating. Send us your comments using Euronews social media channels, and you can see more news about healthcare and the evolution of technology on euronews.com.